continuing on the series. Don't know how long it'll go, but like Brother Allen said, it's about rearing our children and taking a biblical look at that. Not that I have all the answers. Now, obviously, the Bible has all the answers, but we're going to be addressing some things that the Bible might not give exact answers what you're looking for. And so I feel like my job with this series is to find out what your questions are that you wish there was more about that. And the best I can do is say, hey, based on the Bible, let's look at what the Bible says, maybe find examples and all that. But basically, what I, as a pastor, think that is the right thing to do in these areas, okay, based on the Bible, not my own. But some of it will require also experience, that, just trying to follow the leadership of the Lord and do what the Lord has said and the best of my understanding, and then how that went in life. Like, I think that's part of my job as a pastor as well. Let's say, like, hey, this is how things have gone in my life, and so let me explain to you some practical wisdom on that. Not that I do everything right for by any means, okay? And that's what I've said through this whole series. This isn't about like, hey, how have I done it? It's like, how do I think it should be done based on the Bible? So this is what we're looking at. And I've been, so far, been able to answer different people's questions that kind of provoke the direction of the sermon and everything. There should still be a jar back there if you've got a question you want to submit, put it in there. But this particular one had to do with influences on our children, like their friends and stuff. I don't remember the exact question, but this will address the questions that they were asking in regards to influences that other kids have. I mean, that your kids will have in their lives, the influences that come from other people around them and all that. So the title of the message is simply Your Children and Their Friendships. Okay, if it's our job to raise our children, if it's our job to protect our children, this is going to be something that we have to consider, because the influences in our children's life, we all know from experience the influences that were in our lives that kind of shaped who we are. And by the way, like your personality, your style, your likes and dislikes to some degree, your sense of humor, like all of these things are going to largely be based off who your friends have been in your life. Okay, that's how you were exposed to these different things. That's how you develop this culture, if you will. When you went to high school, you fit in with a certain group. However you came to, maybe they just are the ones that took you in, and all of a sudden you start dressing like that group, talking like that group. If you went to a public school, like you probably know what I'm talking about. This is the kind of what happened. If you get into the whole sports scene, that affected the rest of your life, really. I mean, you ever talk to a 50-year-old guy, 50-year-old guy, and all he talks about is how he used to be this football star, and you're like, dude, let it go. You're not a football star anymore. Quit talking about it. Like, we all had our prime, and you're past it, you know what I mean? But we all do that. Like, we live in our high school years. The popular girls in class, who were just always concerned about popularity and looking a certain way and attracting the guys, guess what? They get older up into their 40s, and they're acting the same way. Like, they didn't leave that whole personality stays with them. The way we talk to some degree, sometimes the slang that we use came from that era. It seems like the tweens and the teen years seem to be like a point where we crystallize. Now, not entirely. I mean, I graduated in 95, so it's not like I walk around rolling up my pant legs and wearing when I was in high school, I think that it was still popular to have like half of your hair was spiked and the other side was down. I don't really see people doing that anymore, but or get really long bangs, over your head. I guess that came back for a little while, but thank the Lord I don't do those things. Of course, that would be kind of weird considering my hair right now. I could grow real long and then comb it back maybe, but but a lot of people kind of get stuck in that, in the way that they talk. I mean, come on, you ever met, well, I'm kind of dating myself on this, but always make reference to like the 60-year-old guys who have ponytails, and they're like, yeah man, and all this, and I'm like, why do you talk like that? Because it's from their era. Now it might be beyond that. I might be, like I said, kind of dating myself, but our influences, who we're around, the people that were in our life, all those things are going to shape who we are. And so you need to know that when you're raising your kids. you're not cool anymore. They're not really good. Now, when they're little kids, maybe what mom and dad do and what they say. You know, we see that with Viviana. You know, she'll say some of the things that she hears us say. But eventually, it's going to be like, well, what are my friends saying? And she does that. We see that too, even with her friends that she has here in church. Like, she'll pick up some of the words that they say and mannerisms and stuff like that. But there's coming a time where they're not going to look to you to find out how to act. They're going to look to other kids their age and influences that are in their life. And so you need to know that, because, you know, some of the stuff could be very bad for your kids. For the rest of their life, they're going to have to hold on to some things that happen because of these influences. And so it becomes very important when it comes to raising children to be mindful of these influences. Another thing that is very influential in our kids, which could be a whole other message in itself, but the entertainment that they do, the video games they play, the music that they listen to, the television shows that they watch, books that they read. If you got one of those kids, those are going to heavily influence your children. Okay, and if you think about it, some kids just are kind of loners, and they don't really have a lot of friends. But what they do is they got their books, they got their TV shows, they got these entertainment. And in a sense, you can think about, well, those are their influences then. Those are their friends. The people that wrote those books and wrote those TV shows and those actors and all that stuff, those are the friends. Those are the influences that your kids have. And so all of that goes into play. And as a parent, sometimes we just forget about that. It's like, hey, we're going to teach our kids to love the Lord. We're going to teach them, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. And then we just let them, for the entirety of the day, be entertained or be influenced by friends and the world and all these kinds of things. And so this is why we're talking about this. Is very important. As parents, excuse me, we want to be mindful of, you know, what's going on in our children's life and what's influencing them. You don't have to turn to these. I'll just kind of paraphrase them. You're probably familiar with them, but Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so does a man sharpen the countenance of his friend. I'm paraphrasing. Might have messed it up a little bit, but you get the idea. We want our children to be around influences that are going to sharpen them, not dull them, right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And we want to provide it. Now, it's never going to be perfect, because we're dealing with human beings. We're not perfect. Our children aren't perfect. Their influences aren't going to be perfect. We understand that. But we want to, the best that we can, put them in a situation that's going to sharpen them. The Bible says that we're supposed to provoke one another to good works, right? Hebrews 10:24. We want influences that are going to provoke them to do good things. And that's why we love them being so. And I hope your kids are like my kids, and they just talking about all their friends at church, and they can't wait till the next time they meet their friends. And I hope that's a good influence, and I hope that they're talking about soul winning and you know, how they memorize this Bible scripture or whatever, and it's going to help provoke them to good works. I want my children to be around that. Not that they can't get bad influences in church. That's certainly a possibility, and we'll talk about that. That's part of the message, but we want them to be around good influences that are going to provoke them to good works. We want them to learn good things. We don't want them to fill their minds with a whole bunch of the knowledge of the world. Again, it's going to happen. The kids are going to learn about it somehow. How are they going to learn about it? Well, if their parents don't know about it, then they're going to learn it outside the house by friends, television shows, entertainment, and all that kind of stuff. But we want to stop them from just being. Here's the thing. The Bible says, how does it say? Romans 6:19, be wise unto that. Paul wants the church at Rome to be wise unto that which is good and simple concerning evil. Have you just stopped and think about that? Like, not only is that what I want for my children, but I wish that I would be wise concerning that which is good, simple simple just kind of means like not very smart, like ignorant, okay? Simple concerning evil. But I know this from raising kids in a Christian home where you're pretty strict on them. They're looking for that knowledge. Okay, here's an example. You want to learn a new language, right? You're around all these other people, you're learning a new language, especially if you're kids. What are the first words they're going to learn? They're like bad words, inappropriate words, all this. Like, it just seems like the knowledge that's out there, it's always like we want to get this bad knowledge into you. We want to know about evil. We want to know. I remember the first time, kids are getting older, and all of a sudden they're aware of things that are going on TikTok, and I'm like, how do you know anything about TikTok? When did you have a chance to learn about TikTok? Look, they're going to find out somehow, right? And but the thing is, a lot of times Christian kids grow up in a sheltered and protected, and that's not bad. That's not a bad word. Okay, sheltered and protected home. They've got to figure out ways to learn the evil things of the world because you're not teaching it to them, right? So they're just picking it up. If they get a clip of a song, or they get a clip of a YouTube video, or watch something on TV, like they're soaking it in. Like, oh, I don't get to learn this stuff on a regular basis, and so this is my chance to get it, right? Well, we want them to not get that stuff. It's kind of nice when you're embarrassed. Or tonight we were out soul winning, and it was a peculiar smell that was coming from that house, and I was like, Brother Allen, not that he knows anything about it, but I was like, Brother Allen, I don't know anything about drugs. Like, I don't really have any kind of past experience with that or whatever, but was that the smell of drugs? Like, I feel like that was the smell of drugs. And you know what? Some people would be embarrassed by saying that because they would rather be like, oh, yeah, I know which drug that was. I know, like, especially kids, they just grow up like they want to be in the know. They want to be privy to all the popular stuff and all the wicked things people are doing. And the Bible says, like, no, you know what's better? Be wise concerning good and to be simple concerning evil. Like, just don't even know about it. I love that. I can't even remember who it is I always got her mixed up with, but every time I tried to talk about Taylor Swift, I always said something else. I don't remember what her name is now. It's not coming to me. But I always said the wrong name, and people laughed at me. And I was just like, you know what? I'm glad I don't know. Because who wants to know about those things? Now, unfortunately, I do know now. But you start looking into stuff, and you start finding things out. But it's just like, I would love for our kids just to not even know what the latest trends are, not even know who the popular musicians are and all that. And there are people out there, even Christians, that are like, oh, then they're going to get into the world and they're going to be so, they're so sheltered and all that they're going to look dumb and they're not going to be cool and all that. Good. Why do you want them to be full of all this wisdom and to fit in with the world? Come out from the world and come out from among them and be ye separate, the Bible says. And again, when they reach their teen years, so you're talking about, 12, 13, 14, all the way up till they graduate, that seems to be where these things are really getting burned in, just kind of locked in, like this is who I'm going to be in my life. And they go off to college and all that in a typical situation. And we seem kind of weird, for preaching, like, we don't want our kids to go that route. We don't want to send them here. We don't want them to do that. I don't send my daughters to college. I don't even send them into the workforce. And all of a sudden people think you're so strange, like some part of a cult or something like that. Look, my job as a father is to protect my kids. And I think the Bible gives us a lot of information about how to do that and what happens if we don't do that and what goes wrong. So let's talk about some situations that we need to be mindful of, and we'll look at some Bible examples on this and try to, draw out as much application of this as you can, all right? Number one, obviously, we don't want our children just running around with whomever, okay, and they're unsupervised, we don't know who they're going out with, but it's just like, hey, be back. Now, this is how I grew up, and I know everybody's like, well, when I was a kid, like, be back before dark. If it gets dark and you're not back home, then you're going to get in trouble. And so that's the only rule. Just be back whenever it's dark. Now, I know we can all look and say, like, well, we did that when we were kids, and look, we survived. We made it okay. Yeah, but we got ourselves into a lot of trouble. Let's not lie to ourselves. If you didn't have that type of supervision, you probably got yourself into a lot of trouble. And I'm just saying, looking back on that and knowing what I know now and thinking through from a biblical perspective, I don't want my children to have to go down that road. Okay, I don't want them to have these bad influences and things happen in their life that are going to affect the rest of their lives. I want them to be sheltered from that. And so obviously we don't want our children just running around with whomever. And that doesn't only apply whenever they're teenagers. In fact, by the time they're teenagers, that's when you should hopefully be able to start loosening up a little bit as they're getting ready to go out and be their own person and eventually not even be in your household anymore. So it starts when they're a lot younger. So hopefully by the time they're in teens, that they're strong enough to endure some of these influences and all. But when they're kids, they're not strong enough. They don't have a sense of what's right and what's wrong. Maybe they have a sense of it, but they're not wise enough. They haven't been taught enough to be able to know, I got to choose that which is right. Okay, and so they're naturally going to, what's the Bible say? Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. That's just how it goes. And our job is to train that, train them. And part of that means we're going to decide what friends they're allowed to hang out with and to what extent they're allowed to hang out with them and all this. But just to let them go and not even know and I understand why the world is okay with that, because they're taught from a young age, and generation after generation has been like, hey, you send them off to school, and while they're in school, we go to work, come back, maybe take them to practice or something like that, and then you go do whatever you want to do while they're practicing, and then at home you eat dinner together, and then you go to sleep, wake up, and it's another day, and you don't even have a clue what they're doing throughout their. I mean, you might check up with their teachers and find out different things, and hear things from time to time, ask them how their day was or whatever. But I guarantee you, if your child is left to their own devices like that, there's a whole lot you're never going to know about what's going on in their life. And so we certainly don't want to just let them go unsupervised just do it. Now, we recently discussed, probably when it was, I think it was whenever I was talking about arranged marriages and stuff like that. That sounds funny, but if you heard the message, it's not that weird. We talked about Dinah at some point anyway. And I'm not going to go there because we just talked about it recently and dealt with it a little bit. But basically it says that she went out to see the daughters of the land, okay? Which I take to mean that she just went out with the girls. Parents didn't know where she was going, what she was doing exactly. And along the way, she met a man named Shechem who was of the world, and he enticed her, and they did things that they shouldn't have done, and then, bad things happen as a result of that. Okay, so obviously, I would say particularly with our girls, if you're raising girls, okay, and I know this is not popular in the world. The world's going to think we're weird. Okay, that's just the way it is. And today, even Christians are going to think you're weird if you're part of a church like this who believes very strictly on these things and takes the Bible literally. Even Christians are going to think you're weird. But I remember recently I listened to like a true crime kind of an idea where they tell this story about somebody who died, and then they kind of go over some of the court cases behind it and everything. And the narrator was talking about this person. He talked about his parents were very strict, and he said the dad was a pastor of a Baptist church. I have no idea what kind of church it was, or I don't know anything about the people. But this person who became a murderer of some sort grew up in a home where the parents were really strict. And the guy was just like, just to let you know how strict it was, he was saying things like, in their church, they didn't even allow women into leadership positions. And I'm just like, well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And it just go down the line, like, if you could just start saying, hey, these are all the strict things they did with their kids and their family. I'm just like, yeah, I mean, what's wrong with that? Well, I guess your kid's going to end up being a murderer. So this is the way they were taking it. Like, this is just so weird. Like, anybody that's that strict on their kids aren't going to turn out right. Well, I don't believe that's true. Based on the Bible, based on experience, I don't think that's true. You say experience, they say, oh, how about preacher's kids? Everybody always talks about the PKs, right? The preacher kids are always like the worst ones. Where's Braden? Sorry, Braden. This is just what they say, okay? It's a lot of pressure on them, and it's not true. Like, a preacher's kid doesn't have to be a bad kid just because he's a preacher's kid. But the mentality is like, oh, well, if you're constantly overprotecting them and you're doing this and you're doing that, then they're going to just like rebel whenever they get out of the house, okay? Or whenever they're not around you. And that doesn't have to be the case. But you know what? If it is, it's on them. You're doing your best to protect them. If they are just so drawn to want to be like the world and all that, then that's on them. But you don't have to allow it in your house. You don't have to. And of course, there's a lot more to parenting than just saying, no, we don't do that. There's a whole lot of explaining. There's demonstrating. Like, they got to obviously see They don't want to see hypocrisy. I would say this too, again, if we have boys, and this is, again, right off the Bible, a whole other message I'll have to preach another time, but if you're raising boys, that is also a little different. At some point, you're probably going to allow your boys to be a little more free, if you will, because they're going to have to go out to the workforce, they're going to have to go out, and become that man who's going to protect and provide for their family. So raising boys is a little bit more like, all right, you got to go out there and be the man. But we have to understand that there are other men out there who are seeking women, for instance, and so our daughters, we got to protect them. Does that make sense? Like I think everyone understands there's a little bit different in raising a girl, raising a boy. Again, the world says that that's insane, that's crazy. How could you? That's double standards. Like your boys and your girls are equal. Yeah, but they're created differently. There are different responsibilities from a biblical perspective. Okay, so anyway, number one, we don't want our children just running around with whomever without supervision. Okay, I don't think I need to dwell any farther on that. But the number two is this. This is a question. All right, what do you do when the bad influences on your children, the bad influences on your children are your friends' children? Okay, because this is just the reality. This is going to happen. The bad influences aren't those kids on the street that they're playing with that you don't even know. What about when the bad influences are those people who are your friends' children? That creates a whole different situation. Now, I'll say this, first of all, Christians, we shouldn't be best buddies with the world. Now, I think some people don't get this. Now, sometimes we can go to 1 Corinthians 5 and we can say, all right, the Bible says, like, if it's your brother who's doing these wicked things, then you need to put them out from among you. But it's okay to have the world, friends of the world who do these wicked things and all that because they're not saved. And so you should still just... Now, that's a little bit of a mix-up of what's being said here, okay? The bottom line is my friends, the people that I hang out with, the people that I want influencing my life as well as my kids' life, are those who are going to have the same values, the same principles. They're going to have the same belief system, because that's what we have, our common bond. That's what brings us together. That's what makes me want to hang out with this person, okay? And so I'm not only do I not have a desire to hang out with the world that does the worldly things, they don't have a desire to hang out with me. It doesn't take very long if you live in a Christian life for them to be like, that person's just not any fun. He's not cool. I don't want to hang out with them. And if you're trying to, well, then James 4:4 says, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Like, why are you going after the things of the world? Why is it so important to have a good standing in the sense of, hey, that's just the perfect person. I want my kids to be just like their kids and all this kind of stuff. Why is that so important for you to have that mentality for the world that's not saved? Do you understand what I'm saying? We want to please God. And the things that please God aren't the things that please the world. They have pleasure in wickedness. They have pleasure in all these bad things. And so we can't bring that to the table. Now, I'm not saying that we just treat the world badly. That's what 1 Corinthians 5 is saying about. Look, you can't not work among people that are living wickedly if they're unsaved. Obviously, they're not going to do right because they're unsaved. We can't not be nice to our neighbors, you know what I mean, because they do all these wicked things. Oh man, that guy over there drinks. Oh man, that guy's living with somebody who's not even married to him, and I don't even want to look at them because they're these wicked people. Like, they're unsaved. What do you expect? They're going to be wicked. Okay, so that's what that verse is talking about. But at the same time, I'm not going to go hang out with them. Those aren't my people. Those aren't who I'm going to be have friendships with. So understand this: when I say your friends' children, it should be understood that we're talking about your Christian brothers and sisters that you're hanging out with on a regular basis. Like, why would you even want to hang out with the lost people and let your children be influenced by them? Now, I understand the mentality. Well, if you don't hang out with them, how are they going to get saved? Look, it's not my children's responsibility as young kids to just go out and hey, I know I'm throwing you into the fire, but just go out there and hopefully you're going to save somebody. Like, no, my job whenever they're children is to protect them, to keep them from the harm, and to help them to grow and learn and be educated so that whenever they get older, they know what's right and what's wrong. And now they can decide who they're going to hang out with and all that stuff. I remember in Oklahoma City we had a next door neighbor, and we were new, like raising children. They're young children, and I think at that point we had all three children. And our next door neighbor, there was a kid about, I don't know, probably like Zachary's age at the time, but they were all really little. And he'd be riding his bike, and he's lonely, no friends to play with, so he'd want to play with my kids. And I'm thinking, it's okay, like I don't want to say no, that seems rude, and I don't want to be that neighbor that's just like, no, you can't hang out with my kids. So we're trying to think of ways, of course, hey, maybe we can influence him, maybe we can reach him, bring him to church, talk to his parents, give him the gospel. We're thinking all those things because that's the relationship we're supposed to have with the world, okay? But just to say like, well, yeah, you don't have anybody to play with here. Why don't you go out and play with so-and-so and be best buds? Okay. Well, you don't know anything about that kid. You don't know what he's been exposed to. You don't know what his ideologies are, what he does in secret. You know what he's gonna do with your child. You're just like feeding them to the wolves. Okay. So it should be understood. Like, no, we're not going to embrace in relationships with the world for our children that we're trying to raise according to the Bible. And again, the world's not going to understand that, and unfortunately, a lot of Christians aren't going to understand that nowadays because it's just so foreign of a concept. But I'm telling you, it's the biblical way, and it's also what I can tell you from experience. If you don't think about these things and put it into practice, your children are going to be destroyed. And Dinah's a great example of that. You know, just going out to be with the daughters of the land, innocent. They might have even been fellow Jews, you know, with the same mentality. But nobody knew what they were doing. There was no supervision. There was no one to protect them. And they ended up getting in all kinds of trouble. Okay, so so your friends who are your Christian brothers and sisters, this is really going to speak to us now. We're going to get real practical because when we're at church and we're fellowshipping, it's our friends, our brothers and sisters who have kids that our kids are hanging out with. I already said, my kids, you know, it's all, you know, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to friends, all of them, Viviana included, in fact, Viviana doesn't know any other friends really, are the ones who she meets at church. And she talks about you guys all the time, and she says your name, and she even pretends sometimes that you're there when you're not there, pretends that we're going to your house or something like that, because this is the relationship that she has. Okay, so we need to know, even with our brothers and sisters in Christ, we need to know what influence they're having on our children. And you know, there are little ways you start picking that up. You need to be conscious of it, though. You need to be looking for it and be alert. Okay, and you start seeing like, hey, I think that this influence, or I saw this happening, or I heard them talk about this, and I think this influence is influencing them in a negative way. This relationship that they have. Okay, now because it's our brother and sister in Christ and it's their children, the answer is pretty obvious. What do? Well, we apply Matthew chapter 18. Let's go there. Matthew chapter 18. Seems like it's come up in the messages here a few times lately. Matthew 18 verse 15. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, you say, well, my brother didn't trespass against me. It's his children that trespass against me. Well, guess what? Their children are their responsibility, and so they're the ones that you need to talk to about what's going on between their children, your children. If thy brother trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. Then you are familiar with how he says that. If he doesn't listen to them, then you take somebody else with you. Doesn't listen to them, then you take it before the church. And then you deal with it in a little bit different way. So we do need to go to our brothers and sisters, and we need to talk to them about these situations. Like, hey, your child is being an influence on my child, and we need to talk about that. But here's what I want to say. Man, this is a quick way to ruin a relationship. You want to ruin a relationship, go and say, hey, you know, my kid can't hang out with your kid anymore because your kid's bad influence. And most likely, that's going to be a bad relationship. Now there's going to be tension in the church. Now there's going to be people that don't like that person, people that stop coming to church and all that kind of stuff, because people are very picky about their children. And how dare you say something about my child? Okay, so that's a quick way to end a relationship, is to say, like, your child can't hang out with my child and all that. So what I would say about that then is, be very careful how you go about this. And remember that this is your Christian brother and sister. And think about how you would feel if somebody came to you and said, your child is being a bad influence on my child. Before you go to them and tell them that, think about what you would do if someone said that to you, because I guarantee you would be defensive. You would be offended by them saying that, and you'd be like, well, first thing you're thinking about is like, well, your child, you know what I mean? Like, maybe you think it's my child being a bad influence. Maybe it's your child that's being a bad influence. That's just how we do in the flesh. We want to defend our children. Oh, our children couldn't do anything wrong. It's your child. And then two people aren't really listening to each other. Nobody's gaining anything. Nobody's actually fixing the situation. Situation is, we want all the children to be good influences on each other. But in reality, we understand that sometimes there's going to be, hey, this is a situation we're having where this child is bullying, or they're teaching them bad things or bad words or bad ideas that they don't need to know about. And nowadays, like I said earlier, like, kids are always trying to pick up those bad things. We want them to be simple concerning evil, but guess what? They want to be wise concerning evil. And so, every spare chance you get, they're like, hey, do you know this song? And they're like singing this song to them, or listening to this song on their phone or something from the world. And it's like, I really don't want my children listening to that song. Now I got a problem. How do I address this? Do I go to their parents and say, like, hey, what's your kid doing listening to this song? Look, once again, we all have children, and all of our children are pretty close to the same when it comes to, like, desires. On one hand, they're wanting to serve the Lord and be a blessing to their parents. On the other hand, they're wanting to fit in with this crowd, and they're wanting to learn these new things that they've never learned before. And so we have to understand that our children have the same propensities to these things. And again, if somebody comes and says, hey, your child's been a bad influence, don't think that it couldn't be true. Not my child. That's not going to help the situation at all, okay? But then also don't just start turning around and saying, like, well, what about your child? Just let's get to this later. What is my child doing? How can I fix that? And but that doesn't mean that you don't address the situation, because here's the thing. Let's say you've done everything you can to resolve this situation. Hey, your kid's being a bad influence on my kid. I don't really want them hanging out each other. I wish they could hang out, but it's just always going to be a bad influence. And so I don't want them hanging out each other anymore. And you've tried everything you can to say that in a polite way. Hey, maybe we could do this. Maybe you could teach them this. I mean, I don't know how you would go about doing it, okay? But you tried. And that person says, that's it. I don't like this person anymore. You can tell by their behavior. They're not hanging around anymore. They're not keeping their kids by your kids anymore, because it's like, fine, you don't want to be around my kid. Like, that attitude that might happen, okay? But you've done everything you can, let's say, hypothetically. Because honestly, this is not a situation that's really going on that I know of. But let's say, hypothetically, that happens, and now you lost a friendship. Well, you know what? Is the alternative actually worth it? Well, I don't want to lose the friendship, so therefore I'm going to let them still continue to hang out with my child and be a bad influence on them. Which is your responsibility? Like, having that relationship with that person, or possibly offending them because you're protecting your child. At the end of the day, which is the more responsible thing for you to do as a parent? So be wise trying to resolve the situation. Be thoughtful and be considerate about their feelings and all that kind of stuff. But it's still your responsibility to protect your own children. And so everybody should understand that that's what we're all trying to do with our children, keeping them away from any kind of a bad influence. Okay, so now let me go to the next subject, because this is even maybe more hurtful or more controversial, but probably even more destructive than what we've talked about so far. What if the bad influences are in your family? Now, this is where a lot of Christians really drop the ball, okay? because it's one thing to come to church and be like, well, you know what, I want to make sure my kid's doing right and behaving right, and so, I don't want them to hang around these people because they might act bad. Like, I don't know how, it's one thing because you're doing that in a public setting where everybody sees you, and it's more on your mind, I guess, maybe their behavior and all this kind of stuff. It's another thing when it's family, because you're like, well, it's family. Like it's almost like they've got to hang out with their family. They've got to be involved with their family. They've got to know their cousins and their all these relatives and hang out with them. So a lot of Christians drop the ball because they're just like, yeah, it's family. They got to hang out with them. And you're like, well, wait a minute. On one hand, you're fighting to make sure that your kids aren't hanging out with the neighbor kids because they're bad influences. You're fighting even in church to hang, with your brothers and sisters whose children might be kind of bad influences on them. But then, when it comes to your family, it's just like, well, I mean, they're family. Like, I know that they don't believe like I do. Maybe they're not even saved, but they're family. And so then you're just sending your kids to whoever's house or allowing them to hang out with these other friends or family members, if you will, who are bad influences. Look, I believe that this is probably the most dangerous influences you're going to have in your life, because of the fact that they're family, and because of the fact that since they're family, you're going to look the other way and you're not going to think about it. And I've heard multiple stories, and I've seen lots of cases, and I've even had situations in our house, not our house, but in our family, where it's like, whoa, how did we not see this happening? How did we not know that this was a bad situation? Okay, and that this other family member is affecting their relationship. I mean, their influences on our children is affecting the way they think and the way that they talk and the way that they, there's lots of things. Or worse yet, as if there's some kind of abuse going on, and a lot of times that's easy to just kind of not even see, because your family has learned you. They know you, they know how to sweet talk you, they know how to make you think that they're fine and they're not going to do anything wrong, and then you find out that they are. I've heard some people talk about how they sent their children over to another family member's house, and then they come to find out that family member is thinking, and believe it or not, sometimes a worldly, even maybe a worldly Christian, if that makes sense, like sometimes they call them carnal Christians. They're Christians, they are saved, but they're just living like the world and all that kind of stuff. And sometimes they actually think that they're doing something good. When they're around your children and they're just like, well, I know your mom and dad believe this and this and this, but when you're with me, we're going to do this and this and this. Like, a lot of us in this room, I think, have probably had some similar situations happen. Can you imagine how detrimental that is to your child? And they don't even think. They're just like, oh yeah, mom and dad, like, they mean well, but they're just so uncool. And when I'm with this family member, then I get to have fun, and they really show me what life's supposed to be like. What do you think is going to happen when that child has a choice, when they're old enough to make a choice of what lifestyle they want to live? When here's the cool relative, that lets me do whatever I want to do, but my parents, like, they won't let me do those things. You know what I mean? Like, that you see how that's so much more influential on your family. And you wouldn't have that with your brothers and sisters at your church, probably, because we all believe the same way. But your family member, you're thinking like, oh, it's no big deal. They're family. They're probably the most influential on your children than anybody. And it's kind of hush-hush. Like, well, we won't tell your mom. One time we dropped our kids off. We were real strict raising our kids about not, there's no sleepovers, they didn't hang out with friends. Look, a lot of people thought we were off the rail, just crazy about this, but we had our reasons. And it was just like, no, you don't stay the night at anybody's house. You're not doing this. We want complete supervision so that nothing bad's going to happen on our watch. We understand this. People can creep in, things can happen, things can be happening in private. We could be at church, having a church fellowship, and kids could be off playing somewhere. We don't even know something bad's happening, okay? So I understand opportunities like that, things could always happen. But anyway, we had a situation where, what was I saying? Okay, so Valerie's grandma, we were like, okay, well, we have to go somewhere. I think it was camp or something. I don't remember. We were going somewhere, and it was just like, well, we have to go this direction, and so we'll stop in Nevada, Fort Scott area, and we'll drop off our kids. They can stay for a little while with Mama and Papa, and Mama and Papa would never harm them, and they're not going to teach them anything bad. They're not going to let them watch bad things on TV. We felt pretty safe about that. But then you know what happened right before we left? Her mama said, I think she knew that we could hear her, and I think she was kind of joking, but you'll understand this. She said, all right, now when your parents are gone, you guys can do whatever you want. Now, sometimes grandparents have this mentality, I know your parents don't let you eat sweets, but when you're at grandma's house, you can eat sweets or whatever. Now, I understand where that comes from. I'm a grandparent now. Look, I understand. Trust me, I understand it. But you also understand what that could do to a child to a greater degree if evil's involved. Like having a piece of sweet because your grandma said you have it is one thing, but teaching concepts or saying like, I know you're not allowed to listen to this at home, so here let you listen to it now, or I know you're not allowed to watch this thing, or this lifestyle is shunned in your house. Well, let me introduce you to it at my house. How detrimental that is to your child that you're trying to protect, trying to keep it from that. So the family relationship is huge. Go to 2 Samuel 13. Here's the strongest example I can see. And obviously this goes above and beyond because there's abuse involved. But this is the strongest example I can see of this sort of thing. Now David, by the way, kind of made this mistake a lot of times where he allowed his children to get away with some things that they never should have got away with, or his family members to get away with some things. 2 Samuel 13. And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar. And Amnon, the son of David, loved her. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend, whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimei, David's brother. So what does that make Jonadab to Amnon, if anyone's following along? Cousin, right? So this is his cousin. Son of Shimei, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very subtle man. And he said unto him, Why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? Wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. Because this is kind of like a half-sister, right? And Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come, and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I might see it and eat it at her hand. So Amnon lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come, and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. And David sent home Tamar, saying, Go now to thy brother Amnon's house, and dress him meat. So Tamar went to her brother Amnon's house, and he was laid down. And she took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cake. And she took a pan and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, Have out all the men from me. And they went out every man from him. And Amnon said unto Tamar, Bring the meat into the chamber, that I may eat of thine hand. And Tamar took the cake which she had made, and brought them into the chamber to Amnon her brother. And when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her, and said unto her, Come lie with me, my sister. And she answered him, Nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. This is a terrible story that we find in the Bible, where Tamar is abused in this way. And, it's all kind of instigated by Amnon's friend, who's actually his cousin. who's hanging out with him. And here they're just family. Amnon, Jonadab, Tamar, they're just family, right? But things are going on behind closed doors. There's influences happening, and as parents, we can't just drop the ball and be like, you know what? They're just family. And I don't know how old these people were, but imagine what degree this goes on with children, right? You're just like, they're just family, just hanging out. Yeah, but you got that cousin who's teaching your kids some bad things. You got that other relative, maybe the cool uncle or whatever. Who knows what he's introducing your children to? Parents, we've got to be on the guard. We've got to make sure that even in our house, we're watching these things. I remember hearing the story about the Duggars. Remember that? Everybody in here probably you know more about it than I do. I never did. I just couldn't bring myself to do too much research on that story. Okay, but I realized that this was a big independent Baptist family that I guess was online in some kind of a reality show or something like that. Never watched one. Don't know anything about it, but except for what I just said. But apparently one of the sons was found out, and I think it got worse since then. I see posts every once in a while about it, but one of the sons had molested his sister or something like that. And now this is broadcasted. This is everybody's watching this. This is what everybody knows about independent Baptists. And I just remember thinking man, what an awful thing. Can you imagine the devastation, to find out something like that's going on in your household? And then it's people are finding out about it or whatever. And well, look at verse 21. You're already in 2 Samuel 13. Look at verse 21. But when King David heard all these things, he was very wroth. I imagine he would be. So what did he do about it? Not much. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad. For Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal-hazor, which is beside Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold now, thy servant hath sheep shearers. Let the king, I beseech thee, and the servants go with thy servant. And the king said to Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all go down, all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him, howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with thee? Then Absalom pressed him that he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, Smite Amnon, then kill him, fear not. Have not I commanded you? Be courageous and be valiant. And the servants of Amnon did unto the servants of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gat him up upon his mule and fled. Okay, so we see 2 years of Absalom just stirring and just holding on to this anger because what happened, and ultimately he takes revenge. And then you see David, who's obviously showing wrath, but then it doesn't seem like he really does anything about it. And I would speculate then that that's why, because David never takes action on this situation, Absalom kind of turns against his father, and from this point on is going to become somewhat of an enemy to his father. But ultimately it's because his father wasn't doing anything to protect the children. We need to be on the guard. Independent fundamental Baptists, the world's going to think you're weird. And every time you're like, well, I'm strict, this is my policy, this is my rule for my house, they're going to be like, man, you're like a dictator and you don't love your kids. Yeah, I do love my kids. That's why I'm being this way. And I'm accountable to God for these kids that he's given me the protection over. And so, in conclusion, it's imperative that we protect our children. But it's also imperative that we realize that our children could be in the wrong as well. Our children could be bad influences. Our children could be doing things. And we have to understand that, you're protecting your children, but at the same time, we have to understand that our children are children too. And they're impressionable, and they've been influenced by other people, and there's all kinds of reasons why this might be the case. But this is going to help us, because if we have to address a situation and we have to go to our brothers and sisters in Christ and say, like, hey, look, I believe there's some kind of bad influence going on. And I've witnessed this and heard testimonies of this type of a thing going on in this church, where someone had to go to a parent and say, like, hey, this thing happened, and I just want you to know about it. It even happened with us one time. And so I want you to know about this, and just, kind of watch this so that this doesn't happen. But it was done in the right spirit. You know what I mean? It wasn't done like, your kid, you blah, 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 and it's my kid, what about your kid? You see what I'm saying? This is not the mature way to handle it. The mature way is to look at both sides and say, like, I understand my child's impressionable, but also my child could be in the wrong. And so I have to understand both sides. And if you think, which is very possible, you would think, like, no, not my children, you got it all wrong. My child wouldn't be bad. My child wouldn't be a bad influence. Well, at the very least, consider the feelings of that person who's talking to you. You really think they got up the guts and the courage to come talk to you for nothing, just to kind of criticize your parenting and your children? No, they actually are. They feel like there's something going on there, and so just consider that. And I believe that if we keep those two things in mind, we can have good conversations, and actually we can, as a church, kind of be watching out for one another and helping each other, right? It's not just like my family versus their family, my children versus their family. It's like our children. I don't mean that in a weird, like, cultist kind of a way, but we're all in this together. We're all raising children together, so we want our children to influence each other positively. So if we start finding out different things are going on, we can't turn our heads away and not recognize it. All right. So just a few thoughts on this when it comes to our children and their friendships and the influences in their life, and things to watch out for. All right. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, thank you for this church, and we are thankful for our independence as Americans, and our liberties that we have as a church to freely worship, and for the most part, pretty good separation of church and state, and all those things that we are so thankful for as U.S. citizens, Lord. But I know we haven't talked much about patriotic things today, because we understand that our home is in heaven, and our people are other believers. We judge ourselves in the church. This is our group of people. This is our nation. And at the same time, Lord, we're kind of like this dual citizenship, Lord. We're temporarily here, and so we got to live in this world and make the best of it. And I thank you that we are fortunate enough to live in this country. And I pray, Lord, that you'll help us govern ourselves in this church as well, and to keep mindful of what's going to please you, and to be separate from the world in the sense of the pleasures and the things that the world seeks, to understand that we're not supposed to be going after those things. The lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, pride of life, Lord, we're not supposed to be looking for those things. So I pray you help every parent in this room, Lord, to be strong, to be vigilant, to keep an eye on their children and on the influences of their children. And I pray that you'll help us to be able to handle these situations as they might come up, and deal with them appropriately as Christians should, loving one another and caring for one another. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.